But what blew my mind is the trade package that, the Knicks are considering offering for Victor Oladipo. I'm looking at it and I'm like, this makes no sense. Hey, what's going on? I'm Keith, host of Sports Vibes TV, and the New York Knicks rumor mill is on fire right now. There have been 3 players that have recently been linked to the New York Knicks via trade, and I'm going to discuss all 3 of them in this video. But before I get into it, if you like the content we have here at Sports Vibes TV, consider subscribing, liking, and sharing the video. I would greatly appreciate it. So with that being said, let's get into today's topic. The first person Mark Berman brought up was Victor Oladipo. That's a pretty interesting name for me because I just recently dropped a video about Buddy Hield, which I'll link up above. And Buddy Hield and Victor Oladipo would kind of bring us the same or similar skill set. I'm not going to say Buddy Hield is as good as Victor Oladipo, but they're very similar players. Victor Oladipo is better. He's better defensively. Buddy Hield is a better shooter. And I think Victor Oladipo gets to the rim and, creates for other players a lot better than Buddy Hield. But what blew my mind is the trade package that, the Knicks are considering offering for Victor Oladipo. I'm looking at it and I'm like, this makes no sense. They're offering Julius Randle, which is a player that I include in most of my trade packages, and some combination of Frank Nitti and Dennis Smith Jr., which to me is in line with my thinking. Most of my trade packages include Julius Randle and Dennis Smith Jr. or Frank Nitti. Any trade for a big name or marquee talent is going to have to include one of those 2, unfortunately, if you are a fan of those, 2 players. But where this gets out of control, where this gets crazy is they want to include the picks that we got from Dallas, the first round picks that we got from the Mavericks and the KP trade, which to me makes no sense. If you look at my Buddy Hield trade that went through, we didn't give up any draft picks, and we got a player that could, provide similar production in the starting lineup. But they're trying to give up 2 first round picks. Let's just look at the original trade that we made for KP. The Dallas Mavericks took that risk and they sent 2 first round picks to the New York Knicks in order to get KP, Trey Burke, Tim Hardaway, etc., etc. But look at how risky that trade was. And the Dallas Mavericks are actually in playoff contention. So it makes a little bit more sense for them to take that risk, and it ended up not paying off in the short term. Yes, they got to the playoffs, but KP ended up being injured. And to me, that was a major risk, and you could see that the Mavs actually had a chance to somehow compete for the actual championship. So the Knicks to make a risky pick like that or a risky trade like that, to me, would make no sense. We are not in playoff contention. It makes no sense to risk that trade and to trade for Victor Oladipo, who is fresh off of an injury. To invest that much draft capital in a trade for a player that is still, the jury is still out for Victor Oladipo. We don't know how he's going to, heal or perform coming from a major knee injury. One major portion of Victor Oladipo's game was his athleticism. So we have to ask, is he going to be the same kind of player coming off of that injury? We didn't get to see much out of Victor Oladipo in the bubble, so he didn't have enough time to impress. But in the limited amount of time that we did see him, he really didn't show some of those flashes from before the injury. So for me, this trade is gonna be a no. I'll have to pass on this trade, and I hope the New York Knicks pass on this trade as well. But you guys, let me know how you feel about this trade down in the comments. The next player that Mark Berman reported on was Paul George. Paul George is a player that I personally want to stay away from. All these players that the Knicks have been rumored to bring in are players that aren't necessarily, alpha males, if I want to use that correctly. They're not 1A talents. Most of these players right now, whether it be their talent level or where they're at in their careers, they're more likely sidekicks. So to trade for Paul George is going to need a similar package to the one that was mentioned earlier for Victor Oladipo. We're gonna have to include, first round picks, because if you look at the Clippers, they traded so many first round picks for Paul George, they're going to have to replenish, their draft stockpile. So any trade for Paul George that I'm thinking about is going to include draft picks, and in no way, shape, or form do I want the Knicks to trade their draft picks. We don't know if this new management team has the scouting abilities to really key in on talent in the draft and make the right selection. So I'd rather them have as many picks as possible and potentially hitting on one of them as opposed to trading, even if it is a late round draft pick. I'd rather them keep that pick and, take as many shots as they can in the draft and hope that we land a good key player. Because we did land, some, diamonds in the rough. We got David Lee. He was a late first round pick. We got Mitchell Robinson. He was a second round pick. So there are moments and instances where we have gotten or found talent later on in the draft. So in no way, shape, or form would I want to trade that's going to actually, ship draft picks off. The last person Mark Berman actually mentioned when it comes to the three players that may be targeted by the Knicks is going to be Chris Paul. And the reason I left Chris Paul for last is because Mark Berman said that the Knicks prefer going after Victor Oladipo as opposed to going after Chris Paul. So that's why I kind of left him as last. And also, Mark Berman reported that any deal for Chris Paul is going to have to be centered around Kevin Knox, which I know a lot of my subs are big fans of Kevin Knox. So that's unfortunate to hear as well. I kind of hoped that Kevin Knox could, stay within the system now that we have Kenny Payne, who can actually work with him and see if we can unlock some of that potential that we saw, 2 years ago when he drafted him. So out of these three players, you guys let me know which one you think or you would prefer to have, and if you're okay with trading draft picks. Me personally, I'm not, but I would like to hear what you guys think. I like being active in the comments and talking to you guys. So drop a comment down below. Once again, I'm Keith, host of Sports Vibes TV, and I'm out.